Greetings to the Zoogz Rift documentary. This is what Ayn Rand has spent a year and a half working on, and now it's completed and it's ready for you. I was born in Paterson, New Jersey, but I grew up in Lake Parsippany. This is the house I grew up in. It's a little bit shabbier than when I grew up. We kept better care of the property than the assholes who live there now. But, you know, I was born in 1953 and I grew up here. My parents actually built this house with their own two hands with a little bit of help. And, you know, it was weird. I had a weird childhood here. I went to Lake Parsippany School, and things were good until about fourth grade or so. You know, I used to love monsters. I used to collect Famous Monsters magazine, and I collected monster models and all this crap, and even Big Daddy Roth and other stuff. And I was doing all right until about fourth grade, and I started to really balloon up. I started eating all the wrong foods, you know, a lot of rye bread and crap. And I started to balloon up, and in fourth grade, they started picking on me and giving me a really fucking hard time, as kids will do, because their parents don't teach them properly how to respect other kids, just like adults don't respect other adults. And I had to put up with a lot of shit in junior high school also. Just being picked on because I was fat, and Pawlikowski's got tits like a girl, and every fucking ridicule thing they could think of. And this bothered me until I was in about 10th grade. And then I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line, it makes me sad to think about it. But I'm not, in 10th grade, I started to fight back and decided that I wasn't going to put up with any more bullshit from anybody. When I was growing up here in Lake Parsippany, my parents were actually very good to me. You know, I didn't have a rough childhood or any of that crap. I lived in a very rural setting like this. It was quiet, peaceful. I used to go swimming in the lake all the time. And things didn't really start to get bad until I started going to Brooklawn Junior High School and started getting picked on for my weight all the time. But up until that point, you know, I was very content just growing up here in Parsippany and walking around, hitchhiking all over the place, riding my bike everywhere, and eating a lot of pizza. I first discovered Dada when I was in my early teens in school. I was in an art class in junior high school, and my art teacher saw I was just noodling on an album cover that, or not album cover, I was noodling on a notebook cover, and she liked it, and she took it away from me and submitted it to the Scholastic Art Awards, and I won some award for it. And she encouraged me to investigate my artistic abilities. And as soon as I got to Dada, I was immediately hooked, because Dada was the most rebellious of all the art forms. I mean, Cubism was a good start in terms of just shaking up the way things were done, but Dada went even further. Tristan Tzara, and you know, just all of the Dadaists impressed me with their arrogance. I mean, it seems like the whole purpose of Dada was to A, play with the irrational, and B, to basically fuck up society. The idea was to get people pissed off, not just merely for the sake of getting them pissed off, but with hopes of a better tomorrow, so to speak. Dada was not just some nihilistic thing. It was actually meant to be constructive in its ultimate goal. And the offshoot of Dada, what Dada eventually died out and turned into, well, right around 1920 or 1919, Dada turned into Surrealism. And Surrealism also dealt with irrationality, but in a different way. The Dadaists just kind of threw it at you. The Surrealists decided to take the concept of dreams, Freudian concepts and concepts of dreams, and interpret them. This is my mom.
That's me. That's me.
This is my mom. And behind me is Tony Butero, the one to be seen on camera.
His good friend.
Right. Now, I'm here with my mom, so we're going to interview my mom and ask her a few questions. Mom, what is my problem?
Which one? Which problem?
Did the band drive you nuts? You know, we used to practice in your basement. We used to practice in the basement back in the early 70s, and it used to drive you crazy. You used to come downstairs and yell at us, tell us to shut the hell up, and then we'd say, okay, and then as soon as you left, we just went backwards.
That's right.
Yeah.
Drove me nuts.
And did you like that?
No, I didn't.
Kids.org. We'll go on the show on so you can help us find the finisher version. Same statue.
The camera, putting the camera on me on the left side.
Yeah.
Because this side, I haven't tweaked that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not right.
Yeah, see, I've got one down over here too. And
We're going to talk about you in the cellar.
I'm missing the complete back of my head.
You in the basement with the band?
Yeah.
They almost drove me out of my mind.
Yeah.
Many times they were going up.
We tried.
And then you met your good friend. Now you're supposed to be
Tony.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Tony.
All right, so we're going to throw the ball over to Tony now, and he's going to tell you something or other. He'll have to think of something to talk
No,
about.
well, I'll tell you, he wants to, I asked him how you two got together.
Yeah.
So we can tell me that.
Okay.
Tell me that again.
So what did you ask him exactly?
I said, how did you two get together? How did you meet?
And what was his answer
We
was,
were saying, what a nice guy you are.
oh, what a nice guy I
And then
am.
he said,
Boy, do I got you fooled.
and then Tony said,
And then Tony said, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, tell them what it said. You can tell them what it said.
No, go ahead.
Interviewed for I can be interviewed for
No,
your mom.
no, oh,
you have to keep it on Tony because Tony said, it's not taken.
So it was the dream concept and irrationality in terms of surrealism that actually got me interested in painting. And I began painting when I was in my late teens. And I really liked it. I really enjoyed oil painting. I thought it was really cool. The concept of design is not all that different than surrealistic, dreamlike concepts, depending on what you do. I mean, there's the Salvador Dalí aspect of it, which kind of takes it in one direction in terms of just these bizarre cartoonish images being painted in a classical manner. But there's other directions too. Max Ernst took it one way, and even Magritte was different, and then Escher later on, and just a lot of people take it in different directions. I decided that I was going to do it through music. I didn't want to do it visually as a career because I didn't think there would be any money in it whatsoever. I mean, it was fun to do, but I didn't think it was going to get me anywhere. And I was also a musician, and I decided to apply Dada and Surrealist principles to my music. The term avant-garde is a pretentious one, and it's a stupid phrase, but ultimately that's what I was doing. It was that type of thing that was associated with the term avant-garde. And this was around the late 1960s and early 70s when I started Zoogz. The goal for it was to be an experimental band that did a little bit of rock and roll. But as the years went on, it got to be more and more rock and roll and less experimental. I always equated music with sex. Music and sex are basically the same thing to me. And I told the band, I consider music to be
fucking. Music is fucking. And when you're getting on stage and you're performing in front of people, really what you're doing is you're starting to pound the audience in a way that you would have sex. For men especially. But even for women, you should be able to understand that it's this pounding, infuriating energy that comes across from the band to the ears and eyes of the audience. I never did drugs. I don't believe in drugs. I wanted to keep my mind clear at all time. I always wanted to have control over my head so that I could make sure that everything was going the way it was planned out to be. I don't want any accidents, or any more than necessary. I got enough problems. So, I didn't do drugs, so the sex thing kind of took over for that. And it worked. It was a gimmick that worked. We'd have girls in the front row at every show, and the band would joke about it backstage, and we'd each pick a girl to play to, specifically. And we'd have bets as to which one would still be hanging around when the show was over. Kind of like a little sexual competition. Not that it ever led to anything. But we had this little competition going as to who would do it. So, if you do the whole set and the girls start coming to the front of the stage and they're starting to sweat, we're sweating, they're sweating. Right on, man. That's the way it's got to be. That's what rock and roll is. Rock and roll is sex. In the early days of Zoogz, it was a weeding out process. We had Rich Hass and Scott Colby and Tom Nagy, and things were looking pretty good. I mean, it was getting tight. But then, you'd audition bass players and put an ad in the paper, and the next thing you know, it just doesn't work out. There's just so many people you have to go through an audition, and they all suck, and, what do you do? So, fortunately, I got Rich. Rich was from Rutgers College. He was a member of the New Jersey Percussion Ensemble. And Rich was very, very well indoctrinated into the world of avant-garde music, and even performed on a None Such album. I forget who the composer is. Doesn't matter. It's not his movie. And Rich was an extremely talented mallet player. He had a set of vibes at the time, but I wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted him to have a marimba also, so he went out and found an inexpensive marimba to buy, and I'm glad because it really improves the music. I mean, vibes are great. I like metal, but I like wood more. The marimba is just perfect. Low register xylophone. So, Rich was very cooperative also. He would drive to the rehearsals. He was never late. He never came up with excuses. And I was able to throw ideas at him left and right, difficult ideas that were contrary to the way that things are normally done. And Rich would handle it with ease. I mean, he'd be able to take on anything I threw at him. So, Rich was a good catch, a good person to latch onto, and he and I got along very well on a personal level. So, things worked out with Rich.
Well, I first joined up with the band. It was my friend Phil Johnston, who was using the name Smago Frank at the time. He later on went on to work with John Zorn and formed the Microscopic Septet, but this was some rock band that Phil knew out in Parsippany, some Dadaist synthesizer player or something. So I went to check it out, and it was an interesting band. I was impressed by the fact that a program was printed up, typed up, it had my name on it and all the songs that were going to be performed and everything, and I just came to check it out and jam. I brought my vibes, and Well, I was impressed by this Rift guy. He seemed to have a sense of humor, and for a guy that only used 3 fingers, I hope I'm not giving away any trade secrets here, folks, but for a 3-finger keyboard player, this guy did all right. So yeah, and I think it was the sense of humor that won me over. Early in the game, he talked about combining the theater of the absurd nature of professional wrestling with rock music, and at the time I'd never heard of anybody doing that, and it sounded like it could be fun. It sounded like it could be dangerous too. So, okay, I'm in. Some of the other people in the band, well, I already knew Phil. He could play. This guitar player, Scott Colby, slide guitar player, he was pretty good too. He could play. Drummer was kind of one-dimensional in his playing, but I gotta say one thing about Tom Nagy. A couple of years down the line, we recorded 2 versions of Lovely Girl. One was a studio version, and the other was recorded in our rehearsal space in the basement. And they timed out at exactly the same length of time. And Zoogz took one of those reel-to-reel 2-track recorders where you could record sound on sound. You can do this by computer now, it's not really a big deal, but just starting them both at the same time, they matched up perfectly, measure for measure, beat for beat. I mean, that kind of metronome sense, I wish I had that.
Then there's Scott Colby. Scott is egotistical and a very talented slide guitarist, but his ego is very big, and he is not quite as cooperative. He wanted to do things his way, and wanted us to do his material, which was pretty lousy, most of it. And it's a real shame. You know, as the years went on, Scott stuck with the band for a while, for a couple of years, but it really didn't work out. There was just too many ego clashes, and I wanted to be boss, and so did he, and there can only be one boss.
Okay, well, let's see. Dissension in the ranks started to occur after a little while, once the band started to get good. And it was kind of about creative control and billing and stuff like that. I guess it basically was a conflict about how much effort was being put in and how much reward was getting back. Anyway, after a bit of a fight, the band kind of broke up, and basically the rest of us went to Tom Nagy's basement and continued practicing my songs and Scott's songs. And I think that lasted about a week. Yeah, about a week, yeah. And after that, I guess, you know, tempers kind of cooled down and stuff, and I finally saw Zoogz after that period of about a week. And in that short amount of time, he had already planned out a whole solo album. He had all the songs written. He had all the graphics for the album. I mean, he had it all. You know, when we were still, you know, playing my songs, and I think a Rolling Stones cover song. You know, that's about as far as we got during that week. So I'm not sure exactly how we ended up reconciling, but we did. And then the band got even better.
You do everything as a democracy in a rock band, and the rock band doesn't gel, it doesn't work. You can't have a democracy in a rock band. Somebody has to be the leader. Somebody has to say, no, we're not going to take votes, we're going to put our foot down, this is the way it's going to be, and everybody's just going to have to toe the line and get in line. And if nobody does that, then nothing happens. The band just doesn't get anywhere. So they found that without anybody really taking a firm hand, that nothing was happening and nothing would get anywhere. Meanwhile, I started another band. I mean, I actually went off and started Micro Mastodons. This was back in New Jersey. And that wasn't going anywhere either, because just as much as a band needs a leader needs a band, which I didn't have. So eventually everybody got back together. Zoogz was back together. 1976 was a good year for recording. We did a whole bunch of good stuff, including Lovely Girl and Would You FIB to the FBI and The Man Who Slugged Your Mother. I did so. And it was going good. But once again, who's this? Who's this? Once again, it just wasn't getting anywhere. I tried shopping everything around in New York City. They told me no. And I was getting thoroughly disgusted. I mean, the music that we recorded in 1976 with no apparent reason, I thought was cool stuff. I thought they were good recordings. I thought it was cool stuff. Certainly enough to get an A&R company, Artist in Repertoire, certainly enough to get them to give us a shot and invest a little bit of money or studio time to let us go in and cut a demo for the label.
We recorded that Zoogz tape that was at different times called Amputees in Limbo, and also with no apparent reason. That thing when Raz was the drummer, Twain Studios. That was my first time with a rock band in an actual recording studio when I recorded with the New Jersey Percussion Ensemble. That was recorded live in a church for the acoustics. So this was the whole studio thing where it takes an hour to mic up the drums and another hour to get the levels, and everything goes a lot slower than you'd like it to. And I was all full of energy and adrenaline, and I was ready to play. And by the time we finally got everything set up and all the levels and were ready to go for a first take, I kind of gave it all my energy, like in every song. So by the time it was over, I was disgusted. I was worn out. I didn't want to hear nothing from nobody. If anybody said, "Good job, Rich," I just bite me, you know. I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody at that point. I've over the years come to appreciate recording a bit more, but I like performing live better anyway. The immediate gratification and all that.
I felt that we were pretty good as an early band, as Zoogz as a band. We were getting better by the minute, and I wanted a record deal. So, you know, I went to 1975 or 76. I went to every damn record company in New York City. You know, I moved to New York City. I lived there for a couple of months, and I went to every day, starting early in the morning. I went to record company after record company after record company after record company, big and small, Capitol Records, Crystalis, I went to a lot of places. And they all told me that we weren't good enough and we'd have to come back. And we weren't quite what they were looking for on their label, but thank you for trying.
Okay, we tried to shop the tape around in New York. That was kind of rough. That's actually what led to the decision, and after a while, to come to California. The most positive response that we would get, and believe me, not all of them were positive, but the most positive kind of thing that we get was, "Oh, well, it sounds great, and if it was up to me, I'd sign you guys up right now, but all the decisions are on the West Coast, and we don't make any decisions here." So, and we heard that enough times to where we ended up moving out to California. Let's see. Mercury Records, there was a lady named Donna Halpern who was interested in us and encouraged us a little bit. She is the one that introduced us to Leslie Fradkin, who produced our first single recording of the song Lovely Girl, which I mentioned earlier, the one that Tom Nagy kept at the same time as the basement version.
The 70s was a weird period for me because I started the band. I became friends with the composer John Cage, and I was very much into experimental and electronic music. I ended up buying an ARP 2600 synthesizer, and I put Zoogz together, not to be a rock and roll band, but I put them together as to be an experimental avant-garde band with a rock and roll flavor, as opposed to a rock and roll band with an avant-garde flavor, which is what the other phony rock and roll bands were doing. So I wanted to form a rock and roll band, Zoogz, and we did that for a while. We were scheduled to do a show with John Cage, but he got real sick before the show happened. This was at the Delaware Valley Festival of the Avant-Garde. I went ahead with my other plan. I was an artist up till that point. So what I had done is taken all of my paintings, films, sketches, and every work of art, plays I had written, every work of art I ever created, I brought to the Delaware Valley Festival of the Avant-Garde in Trenton, New Jersey. This was May 11th, 1975, I think. Boy, my memory is going. And I called the event the Daytona Sea, and Zoogz, they weren't called the Shitheads yet, did a show, a gig at the thing, and then at the end of the day at 5 o'clock we scheduled the Daytona Sea, where I was to destroy every work of art I ever created. The only thing was, when I started this thing, I started yelling, "Destroy all art, destroy before it destroys you." And before I knew it, there were hundreds of people pulling and scraping at my art and tearing it up and helping to burn it, and just doing all this shit. I mean, basically pushing, shoving, yelling, people screaming, "Yeah, destroy all art! Yeah, destroy all art!" It was one of the weirdest things we ever saw. But it started getting a little hairy because people were starting to push and shove each other. The fires were getting out of hand, even though the fire department was on hand with fire extinguishers. But things were getting messed up. And we looked over on the side, there was a whole row of cops standing on the side, and they're all nervously tapping their billy clubs on their sides, like they're getting ready to pounce. And Rich Hass comes over to me and he says, "I think we better get the fuck out of here." And I said, "I think you're right." So while everybody is pushing and shoving and tearing up my paintings and my artwork, my life's work, and destroying it for me, the band got packed up and we left. We split. We were in New York. Things weren't going well. You know, I'd make demo tapes and promotional pamphlets for the band and really do a lot of promotion. You know, I felt that business cards were a really stupid way of doing things, because the money that you spend on business cards you could be spending on a pamphlet that you fold into thirds and pass out, something that you could put photographs in, something you could put descriptions of the band, or any kind of gimmick you wanted to use. So we always did promotional pamphlets. So there are tons of old Zoogz promotional pamphlets that I did, which I guess would be pretty rare if anybody could ever find them. I don't even have them all. And I really went all out with an all-out campaign to get Zoogz a record deal, but it didn't work. Just no matter what I did, didn't work. End of story. And it wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't because of bad attitude. It wasn't anything else. I really, put on my walking shoes and walked everywhere. I put my nose to the grindstone and pulled up my bootstraps and used my gumption to really give it a shot, and it didn't work. One of my biggest influences was Frank Zappa, obviously. And we used to go see Zappa all the time, not only at the Felt Forum in New York City and at the Fillmore East, but we would go see Zappa. I mean, I must have seen dozens and dozens of shows of the Mothers live at the Capitol Theater in Passaic. And every night after we'd get out of the Capitol Theater, we'd drive home. And as we're driving home, we would drive down Lexington Boulevard right here in Clifton, and we'd eat at the Hot Grill. And hot Texas wieners, I swear, these are the greatest fucking hot dogs on earth. I don't mind giving them a free plug because they are so much like Falls View in Patterson, where I spent my whole life growing up eating these great, unique
hot dogs, and the Colonial Grill is very similar to Falls View. So we used to stop here at night, coming back from Zappa shows, and not only that, but we would come back from wrestling shows. You know, Laura and I used to go see WWF, Vince's father's wrestling shows at Madison Square Garden every month. So we'd go there to watch Bruno Sammartino kick the shit out of whatever guy Captain Lou Albano happened to be managing that day, whether it be Ivan Koloff or the Valiant Brothers, or the Blackjacks, or Bugsy McGraw, or what have you. And you know, Albano would talk real tough and talk about how they could beat the shit out of Sammartino. And then at the show at Madison Square Garden, Albano and his guys would just get the shit beat out of themselves by Bruno. And it was awesome. And we loved the show. Once a month we'd go to Madison Square Garden, shout out. And then we'd come here and have our hot dogs, our hot Texas wieners, and go home very happy. So those were good times, you know, all through the 70s. I had Zoogz. You know, Zoogz was becoming a better and better rock band, unfortunately. They were getting better and better and tighter as a rock band. We were doing material by me, Scott Colby, and Rich Hass. I tried like crazy to get us a fucking record deal in New York City for months, no avail. Eventually, it just came down to, if the band was going to survive, we'd have to move to California and give it our best shot in Los Angeles. So in 1977, I just told the band, this is getting nowhere. And I said, you know, Zappa and Beefheart are big heroes. I mean, I had been a Frank Zappa fan since 1966. I love Frank Zappa. I mean, all along I felt that Frank Zappa was the ultimate. I mean, he was the best. If I was going to learn from somebody and study somebody and see if I could pick the music apart, Zappa was the guy to help me do it. And then, of course, Captain Beefheart. You know, you listen to Trout Mask Replica and you think to yourself, what the fuck is this? But I wasn't satisfied with that. I wanted, the first 2 years I had Trout Mask Replica, it gave me a headache. I couldn't even listen to it because I wasn't used to that kind of dissonance. You know, I was a hardcore Beatles fan, and I still am. But, you know, if you listen to it and really try to pick it apart, you can start to understand it. You can start to understand what they're doing. And when I listen to music now, I listen to it very analytically. I want to know what's going on, who's playing what, and I want to know why the parts were written the way they were written, why they were arranged the way they were arranged, why they were played the way they were played. I want to know why. Why. So I told the band, this ain't working, no good. Zappa and Beefheart are in Los Angeles. This is where they made their fortunes and their success. Time to go to L.A. And of course the band, having no money and not being paid by me, basically told me to go fuck myself. But I said, well, I'm leaving without you one way or the other. I mean, either go with me or don't, but I'm leaving. So, sure enough, in early 1977, Rich Hass, Scott Colby, and saxophonist Mooch Urban, Bill, we decided to move to California. So we packed up all of our stuff, just like the Beverly Hillbillies, got in a couple of cars, packed the stuff into the trunks, and drove out to California. And ultimately, on an immediate level, I think LA sucks, but ultimately, I'm glad I made the move, and I'm glad that I live in Los Angeles and in California. It's just too damn cold out here on the East Coast. Even here at Lake George.
Moved from California to New Jersey. We packed up Zoogz's van full of all equipment and basically all his and my worldly possessions to where there wasn't room for anything else. And headed out for California, land of golden opportunity. And we were lucky, I guess, in that Zoogz's brother lived out there and was able to find a place for us to live, an apartment, and jobs, I guess, if you could call telemarketing a job. So, you know, we were able to get by for a while. But soon after we moved out there, well, our drummer Raz was supposed to move out and join us, but he had this gig as a drum technician for George Duke's band, for Nadugu. And he was supposed to move out, but then he kind of did, and we kind of lost touch with him, and that's all we ever heard from him. Haven't heard from him in, what's it been now, 28 years?
Throughout the 70s, it was kind of, you know, the way any new band would be. People who are new to the concepts of being rock and roll performers. I wasn't sure where to take it exactly. We had a lot of improvisation in the beginning, as most arrogant avant-garde bands would do. But we also had some structured material, which was kind of difficult. And, you know, there was definitely a strong humor element. There was a strong slapstick element to the earlier Zobus days, and even Micromastodons was a bit slapstick and silly, and look how funny we are, ha ha. I mean, I Did So. This is a great fucking song. Dinkle Dance is a great song. But let's face it, they're stupid as hell. And how much of that can you do in a career?
Just about the day that we arrived in California, Zoogz announced that he was going to take over the band, and he was going to call the band Zoogz Rift's Micromastodons, which I thought was a terrible name, and I still do. Scott got pissed off, I got pissed off, Moosh got pissed off, Scott quit. I think the fight lasted for like a couple of days, and finally Zoogz agreed to have me billed as like a special guest star or some shit, just so that I could get my name in the band, because I wanted to get something out of the deal, man, you know? I mean, those songs are tough.
With Idiots on a Miniature Golf Course, we had a lot of problems getting that in gear. We had people coming in and out all the time. There were musicians coming in, and they don't like the music, or it's too hard for them to play, and then they drop out, and then That's a big pain in the ass. But finally, eventually, we landed on the 4 musicians who were able to carry that album with a little bit of help from future shitheads. You know, the musicians who basically carried Idiots on a Miniature Golf Course were me, Rich Hass on vibes, marimba, and drums, all with overdubs. Eric Williams, who played most of the guitar parts. Eric was a great guitar player. I don't know where he is now. And, you know, we had Jim Simcoe on playing all the saxophone parts, and he was really cool. So the 4 of us basically put the album together, and then we had a little help from John Sharkey and from John Truby, and things started, you know, getting hot, man. We're starting to cave into the Mabugulu of the fiancé, Rebozo.
Idiots on the Miniature Golf Course. We were the plan was originally we had a bass player and a drummer that were gonna that were part of the band, but they couldn't play the parts. They couldn't do it basically. So Eric Williams, who was playing guitar, offered to play all the bass parts. I offered to play all the drum parts because most of them I'd written anyway. And basically that album was made with it was just 4 people: me, Eric, Zoogz, and Jim Simcoe on saxophone and flute. And by this time I had a little bit more experience in the studio, so it was a little bit easier. And it was kind of fun playing, my own drum parts and then going back and overdubbing stuff on top of it. I guess I kind of acquired a taste for being able to overdub, and now every once in a while I'll record something where I do all the parts myself. Wasn't really able to back then. Closest I came to that was on the Great Apes Ate Grapes, which was drum set, 3 bass guitars, and then disassembled drum set played with mallets without listening to the track. And then Zoogz did all the vocals on that.
After Micromastodons broke up and I moved to Oregon and moved back and kind of had to reshuffle my life, I got married to Laura and things were changing. I decided to start the Shitheads. Only this time I was pissed off because we worked our asses off on Idiots on the Miniature Golf Course, and nobody in LA, nobody wanted to touch that album. Nobody, they wouldn't have anything to do with it, and I wasn't making any headway, and I found that very disturbing because I thought, well, goddamn, this is a great album. If we work our asses off and this is the kind of response we get, indifference, then what's the fucking point? What's the point in even doing it, if that's going to be the reaction? So it was either pack it in or find another way to do it, and I don't pack it in so easily, unless it's food. So I changed the premise of the music. Instead of it being kind of a slapsticky kind of thing, something that was complicated, I took the exact opposite attitude. I took a fuck you attitude towards the audience, towards the record labels, towards everybody. I said, all right, I said to myself, all right, you fucking assholes, if you can't appreciate music that has any kind of sophistication or complexity to it, what can we feed to the lions? It's a terrific song. If you can't appreciate that, all right, fuck you. I'm just going to give you 1-chord songs from now on. I'm just going to play 1 chord over and over, or 2 chords over and over, and that's the fucking song, and you'll like it. I'm giving it to you, I'm feeding it to you, and you'll like it. Fuck you.
After that whole conflict, after the Idiots on the Miniature Golf Course kind of days, it became pretty obvious that I should have my own band, my own songs, my own name, my own material, and everything. And at that point, things started to work a little bit better. But that was after Zoogz went on hiatus and went up north to Oregon. In the meantime, I started a band called The Solutions. Went through a few personnel changes, as bands often do. But when we got back, or actually when Zoogz came back from Oregon, the band went in kind of a more punk rock direction, but a little bit more demented than punk rock and a little more elaborate too. The early punk rock had a lot about simplicity and bare minimalism and stuff. And almost immediately after we went that direction, Matt Groening and people like Bruce Duff, Richard Gere discovered the Idiots on the Miniature Golf Course album, and they started coming to our shows. We'd play at places like the Cathay de Grande, opening for Fox Pop, which was sort of a made-up band, members of the Angry Samoans and 45 Grave. They never rehearsed, they just, show up and plug in their amps and turn everything up to 10 and just wail. But that was cool, they had a good draw, and we played a bunch of shows with them there. That led eventually to getting signed to SST.
It was also during that time, just shortly after we did Idiots, another year or two later, it was 1982, that Aaron was born, and I loved being a father. I loved it. It was the best thing probably that ever happened to me, and I liked babies, and I like little kids. And, you know, Aaron went through every stage you could think of, and it was fun watching him go through all the hell and misery that we had to go through when we were his age. So, and he's still doing it. It was around that time that I started to get angry, and I wrote Spaghetti and Meatball Brain, which was, again, just a deliberate attempt at saying fuck you to the audience. And My Stuffed Animals Have Rabies, you know. I just started, instead of being slapstick funny, I decided to make it a little demented and a little bit violent and a little bit scary. I wanted the audience to question my sanity at all times. I always wanted the audience to question my mentality and think to themselves, well, is he joking? Or, I mean, is this asshole for real? I mean, what's the real deal with Zoogz Rift? And I started making it more and more outrageous and more fucked up as the years went on. Island of Living Puke. I mean, my goal was to freak people out. I wanted to do great music, make it interesting, but at the same time, take their simplistic ears and kind of shove the whole thing up their asses. Zobus was basically a training course for what was to come later. It was a practice rehearsal for a few years and get the band in shape. And then we moved to California and we put together Idiots on a Miniature Golf Course, which was essentially, it was the first album. Once we did that, I had to go out and do all of my own distribution and all of my own promotion. But with the help of Laura, my wife, and with the help of other people who were kind of chipping in, John Sharkey kicked in some money, we were able to get the career of the Shitheads going. And, we did Amputees in Limbo after that, and we did Ipecac. And these were all good albums, but they weren't great. They were good. They weren't great. Then we came to Interim Resurgence, which I really dislike. I like the songs, but I don't like my production on it, and I don't like the musicians on it. It's not that I don't like them, I just don't feel that they perform the music the way I would normally want to.
Some of the early albums, Ipecac, Amputees in Limbo, Interim Resurgence. Amputees in Limbo, or most of that anyway, was recorded at City Recorders, corner of Sunset and Gower. It's a famous studio, a lot of recording. I can't think of anything famous that was recorded there, but trust me, it's very well known. And yeah, I'm sure. The TV industry too. But we recorded that. That was with Danny and Truby on bass. We had this 2 bass guitar player thing going. That was kind of fun. Let's see. After that, I think the one after that was Ipecac, wasn't it? And that was around the time that Mark Mylar joined the band. So we could record at his studio. And the thing about Ipecac, I mean, the instrumentation on it sounds definitely dated. It's got Simmons drums and Danny's playing a BC Rich bass guitar and Korg synthesizer. But at the time, these were the state-of-the-art musical. I mean, these were 1982. And we had that technology, and we were getting it recorded, and it was coming out on vinyl, and I felt pretty good about that. I didn't really play a lot on that album. I think just a couple of marimba tracks and a couple of vibe tracks, but that's okay. I remember at the time thinking, wow, this is the same kind of equipment that, people that make those multi-billion-dollar platinum albums use. So
we did that, and then we moved on to SST, and got a deal with SST with the help of Alan Eugster. And the next thing you know, things were happening. SST was the first label that actually started advancing me a considerable amount of money to do the albums. I mean, it was still their albums. They owned it at the time. But they really didn't give a shit about the bands. SST didn't give a shit. And they say, oh, we hate corporations and all this. That's what they are. They're sleazy businessmen. They take your recordings, which with the money that they advance to you to record for them, and then when the time for the royalties comes in, everybody gets screwed. So, I don't want to talk about them anymore.
We got that deal with SST Records, something that was going to happen sooner or later, I think, because people like the guys from Black Flag and the guys from the Minutemen would keep coming to our shows, and they'd talk about, we ought to sign Zoogz to New Alliance or SST, and it seems like a pretty good idea, and then nothing had happened to that, and then we'd have another show, and they'd come and check it out, and it was pretty cool, we ought to sign you guys, and blah, 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 blah. And I think that went on for a number of years. Then finally, Alan Euchster ended up joining the band, and he was a provider of supplies to some of the people at SST. So he was kind of our in. And soon after that, sure enough, the actual paperwork was done, actual contract. Island of Living Puke recorded at Ethan James Radio Tokyo Studios. And this was an actual, record label, an independent one, but one that I'd heard of and other people had heard of. I guess there was some kind of money involved too, and it was our first real album for a real record label. None of this snout or anything like that.
How about the material?
The material sucked, but No, it's kind of funny about that album too, because every now and then I'll meet people who remember me from that album. It was, one of those things where I was fortunate to have my picture on the album cover, the back cover, of course. But people come up, dude, you played with Zoogz Rift. Whoa, I got that album, Island of Living Puke, when I was in high school. Dude, that album changed my life. And I mean, people say that to me. I don't know if it means it changed their life for the better or for the worse, but out of, all those copies that the record company says never got sold, there sure are a lot of people that seem to know about, specifically Island of Living Puke.
I first discovered the Shitheads when Scott Colby introduced me to Zoogz and said he was looking for a bass player. Actually, before that, he just said, hey, check these guys out. And we went and checked them out. And my first memory of seeing Zoogz was seeing them play, I think it was Madame Wong's. And they were doing Heart Attack. And I said, that's pretty cool. Makes a whole lot of sense. I like it. It's good.
Not everybody knows this, but the liquid Moama was actually born out of a crossword puzzle clue. That's right, these are true confessions, folks. This is the kind of stuff that you won't hear from Zoogz. And let's see, there were three Water albums, right? One of them I wasn't involved in. It was the second or the third, the second one, the middle one, yeah. Because Zoogz and my wife Michelle, they didn't get along too well at that point. So it's okay. I was happier being with her than with ZR anyway. So I wasn't involved. I forget the guy that played drums in that. He was pretty good. I don't remember his name now. But let's see, Water 1. That was the one with Mr. California and Ed O'Brien. I'm trying to remember some of the material that was on that. Well, let's see, that had Mongoloid Middle America on it, right? It was right after the tour. So, Mongoloid Middle America was kind of like Zoogz's tour diary. I ended up keeping a tour diary and it ended up getting published in Music Connection for that tour.
I first joined the band, I really was not prepared for the way the pieces were structured. It took me, I was fascinated by it because Island Living Puke was put together in pieces were being written as we went along. So Zoogz would write a guitar part, and he'd write it, he'd work it out, and then he'd give it to one of the guitar players, and work out another part and give it to the other guitar player. And at first, I was sort of at a loss for what was going on. I'm going, they don't make sense. They don't make sense. And then when I heard them together, I realized that he had this bigger picture, and they did work out. And it took me a little while, but I finally, I don't know, somewhere probably halfway through rehearsing that album, I understood what Zoogz was doing. I started to understand the mathematics behind what he was up to, and that served me very well because later on, Zoogz came to trust my own interpretations of the bass parts, understanding that I knew where he was going with stuff, and I had an idea of the math that he wanted, and how many bars down the line he wanted the pieces to come together, and how many different, the different time signatures, and so I think the Island Living Puke experience was a very good one for me because it really did allow me to get a window on his thinking and how he was arranging things.
The Shitheads went on 3 major tours during our time together. The first one was called Shitheads Across America, and that was a really fucked up tour because it was booked by SST's booking agency, and it was screwed up because I think during the course of the entire tour we only ended up doing something like 3 or 4 shows, and the rest of the shows were either canceled or didn't even really exist. I mean, we drove across the country to New York from Los Angeles, and I remember we got there in the pouring rain. It was in late November of '86, and we got there in the pouring rain. Rich Hass and I drove in bumper-to-bumper traffic for 2.5 hours to get into New York City to get ready for a gig that the band had there, and we finally got there, only to find out that the guy who owned the club said, "What the hell are you doing here?" And we said, "Well, we're here to set up." And he said, "No, we're putting on a play. We're putting on a play." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Oh, that show of yours was canceled weeks ago." So I called up SST and I talked to Chuck Dukowski and I said, "What's the deal here? What's going on? I mean, we drove all this way and you sent us out here to New York City, went through all this traffic, went through all this bullshit, and now the guy tells us that the show was canceled weeks ago." And he said, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about that." Very good.
Well, the 1986 tour of the USA was kind of an interesting one for me because I was kind of homeless at that point. I was like couch surfing, wearing out people's couches, wearing out the welcome mat, getting the boot, and having to find someplace else to crash. So at least for that 1 month, even though it might be a different place every night, it was at least guaranteed some place to sleep. So that was okay. And it was a tour. It was a chance to play every night. Well, just about every night, except for the nights that got canceled, which became more and more frequent as the tour progressed. Still, I was playing often enough to where I just felt really good. I would play drums in that tour, and by the time the tour was over, I felt like I could play anything in the drums. I was grateful for that. I was also grateful for coming back to New Jersey. It was kind of like a triumphant return. Some of our friends, my friend Erica was there, Tom Nagy was there, and my brother John, and it was just good to come back and visit New Jersey for a while, play to an appreciative crowd. Let's see, I seem to remember Madison, Wisconsin was a real good gig. The night after that was Indianapolis, and that's when I got some kind of food poisoning or something. I mean, I was sick as a dog, and everybody else in the band Ed O'Brien, Sharkey, and Zoogz said, hey, you know, we'll just play the gig. Whatever money we'll make, we'll give you your share. But I wasn't about to hear that. And even though I was throwing up every 5 minutes, it's like, no, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to play. So came time to actually play the gig. I had my drums set up. I got puked again, just, you know, to get it out of my system, to try and get through the set as best as I could. And I got through the set. I did pretty well. And I remember thinking that towards the end, okay, only 4 more songs, and then my big reward is to go out in the parking lot and puke my guts out. And it's kind of funny, you know, because most musicians, they think about that big blowjob they're going to get at the end of the gig, or, you know, that big spleef they're going to toke, or that big bottle of Jack Daniels. Not me. My big party was going to be out in the parking lot afterwards. So somehow I survived that. In fact, I survived the tour that the car didn't. We ended up breaking down in Van Horn, Texas, and getting the car towed away, I guess, to the junkyard. It's the last I ever saw that car. Took the Greyhound bus. I think the gig for that night turned out to be canceled, or the place didn't exist, or it had been torn down 10 years prior to the gig being booked.
Well, Class A. Let's see. Rehearsal. Water 2. Water 2. Where did we do Water 2? I don't remember. The thing I remember most about Water 2 is Mr. California. Because I remember he played a big part in that album. He was, that album was it was more symphonic than probably any of the albums we've done. And I think a lot of the symphonic part was brought out by the keyboard. Zoogz, I don't know what Zoogz was thinking at the time. I obviously, nobody knows what Zoogz was thinking at any time. But I would say that he was thinking, we went from, we did Island Living Puke, they did Water. I was not on the Water tour. That's because there was a tour connected with it and I didn't do the tour. So I didn't play on Water. Ed played on Water. And I played on Water too. And I think when he came back from Europe, Zoogz was thinking that he had a bare down, it's called a stripped down version of Water 1. It was very stripped down and very focused on, I think just the 4 instruments. And I think for Water 2, it was more an extension. I think everything was going to be more symphonic, but not symphonic in a bringing in string sense, but more symphonic in a larger sound. It was a lusher sound. And I think Mr. California was a big part of that. I remember, I don't remember the name of the piece, but I remember one piece in particular where Zoogz had written or had him play a very symphonic keyboard part. And then we constructed some interesting angular sounding bass parts to go with it. I don't remember I can't remember right now the name of the piece, but those my biggest memories of Water 2 were that. And for some reason I don't remember rehearsals a whole lot on that. I mean, we did obviously rehearsed a lot, but I don't remember a lot about the rehearsals.
We got a phone call, SST got a phone call in 1986 from a booking agent in Holland, in the Netherlands. His name was Rob Behrens. And Rob called up and said that he and his girlfriend were big fans of the band, and he said, is there any way we can arrange to do a tour of Europe with Zoogz? And at first I didn't want to do it because I was very skeptical about the whole thing because of the last tour. And SST said, well, no, we're not actually going to book this one. He'll book it, and he's doing all the work. He had his own agency, so Paperclip. So I talked to Rob Behrens, and I agreed, yes, okay, we'll give it a shot. So the Shitheads went to Europe, and this proved to be a great thing, even though that tour had a lot of problems, too. Halfway through the tour, first of all, there were 6 guys loaded into a single van with a ton of rented band equipment, And the van was way overloaded. And, you know, we're traveling at pretty fast clips down the Autobahn there, trying to get from one city to another every day. I mean, you know, when you're playing gigs that are 300 or 400 miles apart from each other, and you have to be there, you know, 3 o'clock every afternoon to do a sound check, and then go out and get dinner before the show, and things like that. You know, it's a little hectic. It's a hectic schedule. And we were in Germany, and, you know, we're driving along. I think Rich Hass was driving the van, and something happened. The van shook, and we heard something, and we didn't know what it was. And the van was basically undrivable. And Rich pulls over to the side of the road. We wait. We call up Rob Behrens, and we called up the equivalent of AAA and tried to get people to come out. But there was nobody really taking care of the problem. Everybody was saying, well, you're on your own, basically. Some guy stopped by and offered to tow the truck for like, I don't remember what it was, $100 or $150. And we thought that that was excessive and absurd. So we told him no, told him to get lost. And basically, we decided to wait around for this AAA type company. And we waited for hours and hours and hours, eating hot dogs and sitting by the side of the road. Finally, their AAA truck tow driver guy shows up, and it's the same guy who was there 3 hours earlier trying to make the money on his own. Now he's making it through the company, and he said, yeah, that would be like $200 now, you know, if you have your car towed. We said, yeah, okay. So, I mean, we were under a barrel, and he towed the car two miles back to the shop, and, you know, by that time it was late afternoon. Things were getting late, and he's trying to put scotch tape on this broken axle, trying to get the damn axle fixed. And, you know, I call up Rob Behrens, and I said, look, I said, our next show is tonight. It's in Denmark. It's in Copenhagen. And I said, we can't make this. There's no way we can get there in time to do the show. It's impossible. So I said, you better call them and blow the show off and cancel it. And he said, no. He said, be professional, Zoogz. You're a professional. Act professional. You can do it. If you get in the van and start right now, you can get there in time and do the gig. I have faith in you. I know you can do this. So I let him talk me into it, and the band got back in a broken van. The axle was not fixed. The guy basically did a simplistic job of it and told us that it wasn't fixed. And he said, you better not drive any faster than 50 miles an hour or this fucking thing's going to break again. So here we are. We go to Denmark. We travel over the North Sea or some fucking place, and driving across Denmark in the broken van, driving at a snail's pace at 50 miles an hour, and it's getting later and later. And a couple of times we called the club ahead of time and talked to the promoter and told the promoter, look, we're running really late. We're on our way. We're going to get there as fast as we can, but these are the circumstances and we can't do it. And finally we got to the club, and I don't remember what time it was. It was very late, midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning or some damn thing like that. We were all exhausted, and the whole thing was a mess. And we got to the club just in time to see them locking the doors and closing up. We say, well, wait a minute, what's going on? We're here to play. And they said, oh no, you're late, too late. We're closing up, that's it, goodbye. And we'd driven all that way and gone through all that for nothing. And not only that, but the promoter was, not only didn't we get paid, I mean, they didn't pay us because we didn't play. Not only that, but they were supposed to feed us. The promoter was supposed to provide our dinner, you know, which was worth $100 or $150, what have you. And they didn't do that either. So here it is now, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. And we had no money and no place to eat. Every place is closed, and we don't know where anything is in Copenhagen. We finally found a hotel, and we had to shell out our own money for the damn hotel. And the next day we spent basically doing laundry and screwing around, waiting for the Audi dealer or whoever it was to repair the goddamn van.
Okay, Non-Entity. That was an interesting band, having a trombone player and an accordion player. And then, believe it or not, we took that band on the road to Europe, traveling around in a van full of, let's see, John Truby, me, Willie on bass, Toby the trombone player, Rocky the accordion player, and Zoogz, who took up, enough weight of 2 people. So what does that make? That makes 7 people so far, plus all the equipment squeezed into this little tiny Renault van. So, believe it or not, the van broke down somewhere in the middle of the tour under all that weight. And we had to go to Copenhagen to get the thing fixed. Of course, we were accused of, partying or something, because that's why we missed the gig. No, picnicking, that's it. I guess that's what the Dutch do instead of party. They picnic. But anyway, we missed the gig because the axle broke under all the weight. And I was able to get to the venue just in time to get the last little bits of Icelandic cod, and I was the only one that didn't have to buy dinner that night.
Let's see. Yes, Non-Entity. That was I always refer to that as Zoogz's bizarre Dixieland band, with the addition of Rocky Howard on accordion and Toby Holmes on trombone. It had a very strange feel, sort of a Dixieland pa pa thing, and Toby, and not just trombone. Toby played. He also played. Did he play French horn, or what did he play on that? Tuba. He played tuba on that, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was an interesting thing doing that. And then when we did the tour, Toby was Bob Hope. He wherever we went, it was like a Bob Hope doing a Abbott and Costello movie. So I remember we played in Linz, Austria, a show in Linz, Austria. And after the show, it was a good show, and after the show, they drove us to where we were going to stay, and where we were staying was up in the foothills, up in the mountains somewhere in the Austrian Alps. And it was this hotel that was closed. We were supposed to be the only people at the hotel. So we had the floor to ourselves. And it was late at night, and you could hear in the distance, you could hear some sort of pop band or something playing. There was a conservatory not far from there, and it was echoing through the mountains. We were walking through the halls of this darkened hotel, and we could hear footsteps and voices on the floors above us, but the hotel was empty. And so it sort of turned into this very bizarre Abbott and Costello film, with Toby playing, Bob Hope playing Bud Abbott, kind of, I think. And I just remember that it kept everybody loose. It was, the rigors of doing a tour where you play a different show, and every night you're in a different city, and you're not flying. I mean, you're not with the Rolling Stones, where you are flying from city to city or being, bussed or whatever, and then people take your equipment. Every night, we would break our own stuff down, we would pack it up, we would go back to the hotel, catch half a night's sleep, get up early in the morning again, hop in the van and drive to another country, and then do the whole thing over again. Sound check at 2 o'clock, dinner at 4, show at 8, and it grinds on you, believe it or not. It sounds great, but it does grind on you after a while. And I remember that Toby and Rocky helped to keep that loose. There was a funness to that tour, because they were always off on a tangent. On the other hand, speaking off on a tangent, then of course on that tour also was John Truby, and John Truby spent a good deal of the time underneath the seat in the van eating candy bars. So we'd get these candy bars backstage that have deli food and candy bars for us. And Truby would grab these bunch of candy bars, and And that's what he ate pretty much the whole tour. He would get to the van, and he'd climb under the seat in the van, and he'd lay there on the drive to the next country eating candy bars, and then we'd get up and leave, and there were little trash wrappers and little candy droppings. It kind of looked like you were living with a squirrel or something. It was very strange. It was an interesting tour. It was fun. It was exhausting. It was certainly an education for me. My first European tour. Rob Behrens, man. Everybody needs somebody to be the supposed authority figure. And now here we have somebody who was supposed to be our road manager. And I think we spent more time actually making fun of Rob than we did actually asking him any advice. The only thing that I really wish is that he would have given us maps. We had no maps. We'd get to a town with only the address. We had to go to 694 Singlerstrasse. And where was Singlerstrasse? No, nobody knows where it is. We have to ask people. Rob could have given us better maps. That would have been nice. If you see this, Rob.
I remember the very last gig we did of that tour. We played in Holland, in Den Haag, and we're there and we're real tired and real exhausted. And then the promoter provided us with dinner and set up like a dining room table and all this bullshit, fancy schmancy. And we're all sitting there getting ready to eat, and Rich Hass is very angry, and he yells out, "Don't we get anything to drink with this?" And I thought that was very funny. Rob Behrens was there, but everybody was ready to kill him by that time. And, that's just the way it was. It's funny, also during that tour, one other event that I really liked, we played in Austria. We played in a place called Linz, Austria. And, we got to the town, and we had to go and do the sound check. And then we went out to dinner with the promoter, and he takes us up to the hotel where we're staying, because he made the arrangements for us to stay for the night. And we go to this hotel, and it's on the top of this real curvy road that goes up this mountain, and this is like up in the mountains, and you keep going higher and higher, and there's more and more clouds and fog and messed up. And we go there, and at the very top there's this hotel, and it looked like something out of The Shining. And we go in, and the promoter explains to us that we're staying in this hotel, but the hotel has something like 5 floors. It's a 5-story house, mansion type place. All the floors, everything was shut off. Nobody else was there. There were no other tenants, no other people staying at the hotel, because the hotel was closed, because the owners had gone away on vacation, on holiday for that weekend. So they're just trusting the band. So they left us with the keys to open up and go in and just, settle in and sleep. And then when we were done, they asked us to lock up and put the keys through the mail slot, when we left. And I thought that was a little strange, but I thought, okay. We were standing out in the parking lot. This was earlier in the evening when we first got there. We're standing in the parking lot, and in the background I hear like this German Oompa music playing in the background. And I said, "What the hell is that?" And we found out that there was a music conservatory that was right down the street from this hotel up in the woods in the mountains. And they all night long they're playing this oompa 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 music. And I thought it was very bizarre. So anyway, we did our show that night. Sun Ra had just played there a week before. And they were expecting something good and avant-garde, and we gave it to them. And we were well received. And when the show was over and we did our encores and stuff, we go back to the hotel. Now it's real dark, and there's no lights on, and the place is empty, and it's deserted, and the fog has gotten real thick. and it's up in the forest, up in the mountains, and the oompa music is playing through the fog in the distance, way in the distance. And we go into this hotel, and, you know, we just stayed on, like, the bottom floor where there were some rooms, and, you know, we're taking showers, getting ready to, you know, maybe eat a snack and then go to bed, you know, because we had to get up 6 o'clock. This was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we had to get up in 3 hours at 6 o'clock to travel 850 miles back to the Holland coast from Linz, Austria for the next show. And it was going to be a long day, so, you know, we didn't have time to sleep much. And we're getting ready to go to bed, and my accordion player, Rocky Howard is his name. Toby Holmes was the trombone player, and Truby was there on guitar. Willie and Rich. Rocky comes in and he says, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Hear what?" And he says, "I heard sounds coming from upstairs, up in the dark. I mean, if you look up the stairway, it's dark up there. All the lights are out. Nobody's up there." And he says, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Hear what?" And he says, "There are footsteps." He says, "Somebody's upstairs. I heard footsteps." And I said, "No, come on. Cut the bullshit." And Toby Holmes starts teasing him and fucking around, like saying, doing Bob Hope impressions, doing, "Hey, get your hand off my shoulder, will you?" And, I mean, they're fucking around. But then we started to hear it. I started to hear it. There were footsteps upstairs, coming from upstairs in this supposedly deserted hotel that no one was in, no lights were on, and it made no sense, and it was fucked up. Okay, so when you went on tour, what was it that prompted you to always want to take the best rooms before everybody else got to the hotel?
It's
like you would rush out of the bus thing, make sure you got the best room.
I think it has
first.
something to do with that egoless chirping bird.
No, it's a manifestation of a rational self-interest and my competitive nature, which is dormant most of the rest of the time, and masculine, aggressive, testosterone-fueled behavior of pushing one's way to the head of the line to become the alpha male.
Did you just make that up?
Yeah. No, I believe it. It's
Cool. What did you just say?
If you want anything in life, you
Could you
have to
repeat
push
that?
and grab your way into the head of the line, just like Donald Trump being an aggressive asshole
No,
with
but
all the
could you use the
testosterone flowing.
exact wording that you said the first time?
Push one's head. You'd have to rewind the tape because I don't remember. Push oneself.
See, you're faking it.
Yeah, push oneself.
You made that shit up.
Push one's self to the head of the line with masculine fueled testosterone.
That's easy for
male
you to
rage.
say.
I see.
And competitive nature.
When you were in the shitheads,
Yeah.
now, which one did you hate the most? Which shithead did you really think was an asshole?
Willie Lappin. Willie Lappin. He pretends to be a nice guy on the surface of it, Mr. Friendly Nice Guy, but he's a vicious motherfucker.
Here we
beneath
go.
it all, because when we'd be driving,
get letters.
when we'd be driving through Europe, you know, he'd be go, "Oh, cool, look at that." He'd look at the church like some little faggot. "Oh, cool, look at that." Oh, neat. Wow. And then he'd get into an argument about he'd be driving the van. And Sharky and he would have a contradiction about the direction to go, and Willie would snap and say, "Oh, fuck it, it's this way." And you'd see this underlying piranha-like viciousness. Underlying it, Willie's a very vicious person.
How many times did he hit you?
It didn't hit me, but it's just the spirit, the malignant, malevolent spirit that he...
You're just mad because he used to make fun of you for not getting laid.
Yeah.
And which shithead did you like the best out of everybody? I mean, I'm not saying you should play favorites, but who did you like the best?
Yeah, probably Rocky. Just 'cause
Rocky, yeah.
because the accordion was such a great...
That's how I feel too.
Yeah, maybe we gotta bail him out of jail.
Yeah, right. Now, I was real tired. I hadn't had any sleep. I slept for about an hour or so after we got ready to go to bed. And, I mean, by the time, you fall asleep, it's time to get up and drive to the next the gig. So we wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and there's no more sounds coming from upstairs. But we're all scared to go up there and look. And it was fucked up. And I'm downstairs, and I'm looking out. They had like a lobby that was like a patio. a patio where you look out, and if you look out, all you can see is a little bit of the forest in the moonlight, which goes down into a deep abyss. It's just like a forest that goes down with no end, and through the clouds and the fogs and the mist, and it's very creepy. So I'm standing there in the lobby, and you know, when I don't get any sleep, I get giddy. I get stupid. And I'm standing in the lobby while the other guys in the band are like trying to drag their clothes on and shave or whatever the fuck they're doing. And I'm in the lobby and I said, "Strange voices, yeah? Nice, strange noises come from hotel and woods. Strange American rock band come, yeah? We kill, yeah?" And I'm doing this stupid bit I call Groton, from a name I got from Al Adamson, from an old Al Adamson movie. And the band is getting pissed off at me because I wouldn't stop. "Yeah, you take long time, you get throat slit, yeah?" And they're not finding it funny. Nobody in the band thought it was funny. Everybody's dead tired. And now they're starting to say, "Zoogz, will you be quiet? You know, it's not funny, just be quiet." And I say, "Yeah, we be quiet, yeah. We hope we get away, yeah. Rock band, no get away. Rock band going to die." And like they're saying, "Shut up, it's not funny, fuck you." But once I got into the bit, and I was dead tired, once I got into the bit, I couldn't stop. So I got in the van, and like for the next 4 or 5 hours, I kept doing that Groton routine and would not give it up. No matter how pissed off people got, I just wouldn't give it up. I mean, Willie was driving for a while. He threatened to throw me out of the van. He dropped me off over in Passau or one of these Nazi places that hates Americans, you know. So anyway, it's just another story I remember from that first European tour, and actually it was very cool. I'm glad we went on that tour, and it was successful for the promoters, and it was successful for the bookers, for the booking agent, and it was successful for SST, and I'm glad for all of that. The band, for all that we went through, really didn't make a penny of profit. We didn't make anything. Everybody else made money except us.
Yeah, and that tour, that's when the van broke on that tour. That was a bit of a testy moment. Zoogz was blaming Richie, since there was smoke coming out of the rear wheels, and Richie was driving. Zoogz blamed Richie. Immediate thought was that Richie had left the brake on. Turns out that we were just overloading the van, and it sheared through the rear axle, and we had to have it towed to some small town in Germany where the repairman didn't speak English, but fortunately his daughter spoke some English. But I remember everybody at that time, I was working, when we were on tour, I was working for an auto agency selling parts, and so everybody assumed I was the expert at cars. So they sent me to talk to the guy. And the guy had, it's like this, the guy had all the parts laid out on his table. Like he had this, and he had that, and he had that. And he was talking to me in German, and I didn't understand him. But I did understand when he got to the part where he went, "Kaputt, kaputt, kaputt, kaputt." And I spoke enough English, or enough German to be able to translate that into meaning kaputt. And he put it back together for us, and told us not to drive faster than, I don't know, probably about 45 miles per hour. And so we went on our way to Copenhagen, to our show in Copenhagen, and we kept stopping and calling Rob Behrens, telling him to call the club and tell the club, "We're on our way, we're gonna be there, we're on our way, it's just we're delayed." And I remember Behrens kept yelling at people at Zoogz on the phone. He kept saying, "Stop picnicking, stop partying, you have to hurry." And you know, we're doing the best we can. And we got to the show in Copenhagen, and the club had just closed, and they were nice enough to give us some sort of raw fish sandwiches or something. Nowadays, you know, people would go, ooh, sushi, that's good. But it was some Nordic raw fish thing, and we had the sandwich, and then we had to find a place to stay at like 1 in the morning in one of those expensive American type hotels. But it certainly was interesting with Rob. Rob, for some reason, got this idea that we were picnicking and partying on the way, but in reality, the wheel was falling off pretty much all the way.